inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m, this is Patrick Christys tonight, and my head is still spinning.
The eyes to the right, 313. The nose to the left, 269.
It's victory for Rishi Sunak. The Rwanda bill has passed. The Tory right abstained largely. I tell you what, it seems a long way away, doesn't it, from this time 4 years ago.
Let's get Brexit done. But first, my friends, let's get breakfast done. Thank you all.
Where are you on this, OK? Do you think the Tory right bottled it? Did they march up the hill and then back down it again? Chaos and madness today. I've got the reaction from the corridors of Westminster and MPs going head to head. We'll also be talking about Flop 28. They can't negotiate the phase out of fossil fuels. The whole thing has been a complete and utter disaster. Plus, workplaces could be sued if they don't cater for the morbidly obese. Do massively fat people need a new law to protect them from being discriminated against? And should Europe now stand up against Islamisation? Teachers in France have reportedly gone on strike over threats by Muslim parents for showing kids a Renaissance painting. That's all still to come. But joining me to dissect another wild day in Westminster, our Ranil Jayawardena. Which way did he vote? You can find out online. Suzanne Evans and human rights lawyer Ivan Sampson. This is going to kick off. It's Patrick Christys tonight. Hold on to your hats. All right, email me right now. Is it time to unite behind Sunak's Rwanda plan? gbviews@gbnews.com. I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the Prime Minister has secured a victory in the House of Commons tonight, with MPs backing his Safety of Rwanda bill with a majority of 44 votes.
Order. Order. The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269. So the ayes have it, unlocked.
That's what happened a couple of hours ago, the government describing it as the toughest legislation to be presented to Parliament. But it was also seen as a test of Rishi Sunak's leadership. Posting on social media shortly after that vote, the Prime Minister said the British people should decide who gets to come to this country, not criminal gangs or foreign courts. He says he'll now work on making the bill law to get flights going to Rwanda and stop the boats. Well, despite the win, former Immigration Minister Damien Green told GB News a short time ago that a significant number of MPs could vote against any significant future amendments.
Any amendment that actually cuts away at basic human rights, that breaks our international obligations, breaks treaties that we set up, that have signed, are wrong because it ruins Britain's international relations and means that we can't sign treaties with anyone else. So things like the treaty with Albania, which has allowed us to get thousands of people not coming here, the number of Albanians coming here has massively reduced. Those sort of treaties we won't be able to sign if we get a reputation for reneging on our international obligations.
Meanwhile, in other news today, Downing Street has said migrants living on the controversial Bibby Stockholm barge have been assessed for emotional trauma today. It follows the death of an asylum seeker on board the Bibby Stockholm who's understood to have taken his own life. His body has been removed from the vessel. Earlier, the Home Secretary promised the incident would be fully investigated. The first asylum seekers were brought back onto the vessel in October. Serial baby killer Lucy Letby has been stripped of her nursing credentials after a panel ordered her to be struck from the register. Letby had told the Nursing and Midwifery Council she didn't object to losing her credentials, but she said she maintained her innocence. In August, the 33-year-old was sentenced to 14 whole-life orders after she was convicted of the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others. The head of Thames Water has been telling MPs today the company doesn't have enough money to cover its ballooning debts. The UK's biggest water supplier has £1.35 billion worth of external debt, with the first £190 million due to be repaid in April next year. It comes days after interim bosses said immediate and radical action is needed to secure the company's financial future. The weather and more wet weather is on the way, with forecasts for hail as well as thunder and potential flooding across parts of the UK. Yellow weather warnings for the southeast of Scotland and the northeast of England have been widened to cover central Scotland as well today, and that's in place until the early hours of tomorrow morning. It follows a weekend of washouts, with Storm Ellen and Storm Fergus sweeping in across the country, causing widespread disruption. And just lastly, a homeless charity has been joined by a surprise royal guest at their Christmas lunch today. Take a look at Prince William joining volunteers at the Passage charity to help serve their annual festive meal to those the homeless charity supports. Posting on social media X, they gave a special thank you to the future king for his encouragement, for his help, and they said his inspiration. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Four years ago today, the Conservatives and Boris Johnson won a stonking landslide victory over Jeremy Corbyn's socialist cabal. Who could forget these scenes?
Let's unite this country. Let's spread opportunity to every corner of the UK with superb education, superb infrastructure and technology. Let's get Brexit done. But first, my friends, let's get breakfast done too. Thank you all.
But at 8 a.m. this morning, there was a very different mood at a very different Tory breakfast club. Before sunrise, the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak tried to woo hard-hitting MPs from the new Conservatives group, which included Lee Anderson, Miriam Cates, Danny Kruger and Jonathan Gullis. There were reports that the PM had even laid on smoked salmon for the vital summit. Later in the day, it was confirmed he provided humble bacon butties instead. Sunak won't push the boats back, and he failed to even push the boat out here, didn't he? But meanwhile, before the morning was out, Keir Starmer was smugly revelling in the chaos despite not having a coherent plan himself.
Well, this is what the Tories fail to understand about it. Yes, Brexit was a vote for lower immigration. Of course it was. 7 years they've had to make Brexit work. But every time they run up against a choice between raising skills and working conditions or issuing more visas, they choose the higher migration option. And it's not an accident. It's who they are. They're not interested in earning your vote. They feel entitled to it.
Well, it is becoming increasingly difficult to argue with that, isn't there? Then there was some confusion as to whether or not recently resigned Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick might actually vote for the same bill that he quit over. After a quick chat with Robert, I broke the news that he was not going full reverse ferret. He would not be voting for the Rwanda bill tonight in its current form. Then, at 3 p.m, leaders of the New Conservatives, Danny Kruger and Miriam Cates, published in The Telegraph, "This Rwanda bill will not let us take back control. You should have bought the smoked salmon, Rishi, shouldn't you? Or maybe a bit of caviar, maybe a little bit of champagne." But then out of nowhere, in come the DUP. MP Sammy Wilson leading the charge. There is a real danger that Northern Ireland will become a gateway for illegal immigration if this bill were to become law. Then, in another ridiculous twist, Sunak summoned his climate minister, Graham Stewart, to fly back from the climate conference COP28 in Dubai so that he could lodge his vote before he flies back again. That will be a 7,000-mile round trip, pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere so that he can back a policy that gets more flights in the air. You love to see it. There were even rumours that the government was threatening to remove the whip from anyone who voted against the bill, but quickly changed their minds. And just before the vote, Brexit Spartan, leader of the ERG, Mark Francois, just had to have a little moment in the limelight, didn't he? Remember yesterday he was calling for Rishi to pull the bill? Well, here he is today.
I have just chaired a meeting of what you in the media are now referring to as the 5 families in the Wilson room. We have decided collectively that we cannot support the bill tonight.
Right, well, it's nice to see such a group of patriotic, principled, brave individuals choosing to... check notes here. So, abstain. Well, here's what it all eventually came to in the House of Commons.
The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269.
So the ayes have it, unlocked.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it, indeed. The Rwanda bill passes by a majority of 44, so that's what has happened. We're all up to speed there. OK, we've lived it, haven't we, so far today? Regrettably, a day none of us will ever get back. But what we need to find out now is what's happening right now and what will happen in the next 24 hours or so. And for that, there is nobody better than our political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris joins us now from College Green. Hit me. What's going on?
Patrick, the right is licking its wounds. A 44 majority for the Rishi Sunak government is more than was being forecast earlier. We thought it might be 10s or 20s that support it. What this means is that this bill is much harder for the House of Lords to amend it once it's got through the Commons. Had it been a very tight margin, then the peers, no question, would have used that as an excuse to amend the bill when it got to them. So what happens next in the House of Commons is that there's a session of the full House of Commons, a committee of the full House, when they'll look at amending it. It's very clear that Mr Sunak has told the right that they will be allowed to harden up measures that they are unhappy with. Maybe he might to apply a more general notwithstanding clause for all of human rights laws, maybe relating to these arrivals, not just in particular cases. That is an option, but if it goes too far, the One Nation caucus will join forces with Labour to vote it down. It's a real delicate high wire act for the PM. You asked before there in your opening remarks, Patrick, why do these people abstain, not vote against? They're trying to play the long game. They recognise that had they sunk this Rwanda bill today, it would have been historic and jeopardised the stability of the government. Almost certainly Labour would have gone ahead with a no confidence vote in the government, probably by Thursday, tabling it tomorrow, and Sunak himself could find him out of a job or facing an election, I should say, very, very imminently in January, February. Tories don't want that. They're not mad. They're not turkeys who vote for Christmas. There's no way they'd want that because they're 23 points behind in the polls, left with maybe 135 seats after a February election. That would be madness. So instead, they're playing a game here, Patrick. They're abstaining, withholding support. We reckon of the 37 Tory MPs who abstained, only 8 of them had permission not to be here because they're away on business, they were ill, they couldn't get back in time. So 29 Tory MPs willfully abstained. That is enough to overturn the government's working majority at third reading, and that's what could happen. So those 29 Tory MPs, they're the ones who will be receiving offers for lunch and dinner with the Chief Whip, meetings with maybe Mr Sunak over Christmas and Chequers, lots of mulled wine, try and make them support the measures and make it work.
Yeah, all right. And meanwhile, obviously, the British public just have to sit and hold our breath and deal with the ongoing illegal immigration circus. Christopher, thank you very much. Christopher, I hope that our political editor is putting a right stint from outside Parliament there. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. We've got former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena, political commentator Suzanne Evans and specialist immigration lawyer whose services we will be requiring tonight, Ivan Sampson. Ranil, I'll start with you. What do you make of this? How did you vote, firstly?
So I voted with the government to get this bill through second reading for the reason that, of course, Christopher Hope is absolutely right on, which is that there is an opportunity here to get some tough legislation on the statute book that the Labour Party would want to oppose. You know, Keir Starmer has opposed consistently every single piece of legislation to tighten stuff up. If we were to vote this down today, we'd get nothing. So it's far better in our collective judgment, I think, and I think that's what we've seen on the floor of the House today. People abstaining, voting for it, in order that we can get it to committee and that we can really tighten it up.
Suzanne, would you have voted against this?
I think it's a dog's dinner of a bill, so I think I possibly would have done yes. I mean, as far as I can tell, and I'm sure I've got two people on either side of me that probably know the detail of the bill much more than I do, but basically, as far as I can see, the bill declares Rwanda a safe country, regardless of anything else. It's basically putting into law this idea that Rwanda is a safe country, in defiance of the Supreme Court, effectively, and ordering the Supreme Court and everybody else in the country to treat it as such. But it also doesn't prevent any individual migrant taking appealing to the European Court of Human Rights. But then the bill also allows ministers to ignore the European Court of Human Rights and any ruling that might make. I mean, have you ever heard of such a nonsensical piece of legislation that basically challenges the courts, challenges the international courts with which, whether you like it or not at the moment, we have a bilateral agreement? It's a dog's dinner of a bill. I've never seen such a mess in my life.
All right, Ivan, has Ranil just voted for something that won't work?
He did, because if you look at the terms of the bill, what's interesting is Clause 3. What it does is Clause 3, it excludes basically any challenge, whether it's through the courts, through the Human Rights Act, or through common law. But what it doesn't do is exclude Section 4 of the Human Rights Act. So what that means is that the courts here, the Supreme Court, can declare that bill incompatible with the European Convention on Human Rights.
OK. Ranil?
So I think this is exactly the point, which is when we get this to committee in the new year, every member of Parliament can have a vote on this, unlike most bills. And these are the sorts of things that do need to be tightened up. Lots of us very clear on this with the government, you know, behind the scenes in the conversations that have been had, that, you know, we want this bill to work and we want things to be tightened up. And, you know, that's exactly the point, that, you know, at the moment you've got the courts, the lefty lawyers telling Parliament, telling ministers what to do and how to do it. And we do need to make sure that that does not happen anymore. Parliament must be supreme.
Before I go back to you for the final word on this, Suzanne, I mean, are you one of those lefty lawyers?
No, I'm actually not a lefty lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I'm actually president of our local Conservative Association. But this is it. Look, it's not compatible with our international treaty obligations. Right. And what the government's saying is, we've got this new treaty, it's the law, but we choose which treaties we want to comply with, which treaties we want to and which treaties we don't. You can't do that.
That's parliamentary supremacy. That's what democracy in this country means.
Suzanne, have the Tory right bottled it today?
I think they have bottled it, but I absolutely take their reasons why. Christopher Hope and Lucia did them very well, and so has Ranil. They did bottle it, but probably for saving the skin of the Conservative Party. Ultimately, the only way out of this hole, in my opinion, is to leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
Which is not going to happen, is it?
It's not going to happen.
No, I think the view from most people in the Conservative Party is that actually, right now, to solve this problem, to get flights taking off, we don't have to do that. We need to reassert that Parliament is supreme. Parliament decides the laws in this country, not the courts. And if we tighten up this bill, it can do exactly that. That's what Robert Jenrick resigned on and he believes can be made possible.
When's that first flight going to take off, Ranil?
Well,
I think never.
There was a massive debate about the sovereignty of Parliament. And the relationship between the executive and the judiciary is a complex one. There's mutual respect for one another. And what's in the past, what's happened is the courts will interpret domestic legislation in a way that it doesn't compromise our obligations under international law. And so, but what the government has done is said, Rwanda's safe. There's no way you can interpret any other, well, they've left no room for the courts to interpret. Well, not really, because on what basis?
Because Parliament decides the law of the land, not the courts.
Well, I got that, but you have to make rational decisions based on evidence, not based on I want it. It sounds like a kid who's got his toy out of a pram. It's ridiculous.
So what would you do?
I would look at the evidence.
But you would have no flights taking off to Rwanda.
No, I wouldn't.
There we are.
No, I wouldn't.
That's the point.
Because there's other ways to deal with it. Look, Article 2 of the treaty says objective to deter people coming across on boats. That's the objective.
And just to clarify, because I think this is an important issue, and then we will move, because we're going to have a debate very, very shortly about whether or not it's time to get behind Rishi and Rwanda. I'm looking at the inbox at the moment. I'll go there, gbviews@gbnews.com. Has Rishi Sunak given you assurances that there's going to be amendments to this bill that will toughen it up? Is that where you are? Is that why, I know you voted for, but is that why people have abstained? Because they have now got complete trust in Rishi Sunak. This is going to be tougher.
Absolutely. You know, government ministers have been engaging with parliamentarians to make clear that the government will look at amendments. And the key thing is here, if it's not good enough, then people will revisit this when it comes back before the House and may well vote it down.
All right, look, time for one quick email. Megan says, congrats to Rishi. 44 votes approval, economy growing, manufacturing leapfrogging France, wages rising faster than inflation. This is what Megan said here. And she says that Labour always increases unemployment. Don't let Labour get a look in. Love Megan. Well, love back to you, Megan. Thank you very much for the email. Keep your emails coming in. Fair to say a range of views in the inbox. Now, still to come. We get Policing Minister Chris Philps's reaction to a well-timed victory for the government before former Home Office Minister Lord Greenall joins me live to answer whether or not today's results mean that we will get Rwanda flights off the ground anytime soon. I want a timeline on this if we can get it. But up next, in the head-to-head. As Rishi Sunak's rewritten Rwanda bill passes through the Commons, is it time to get behind Rishi now? And Rwanda, Conservative MP Philip Davies takes on co-founder of Novara Media Aaron Bastani. Sparks will fly. Oh, but also, how would you like to win £10,000 in cash? Brand new tech and shopping vouchers? Well, you could be the winner of our very first Great British giveaway. Here's all the details. Now you can make those prizes yours.
This week, we're launching the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to grab some amazing prizes and start your new year the right way. You could win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Imagine having all of that extra cash in your bank account. We'll also bring you bang up to date with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we'll give you £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
I'm absolutely gutted I'm not allowed to enter that, but there we go. We'll continue to bring you all of the fallout from this momentous political day. That's next, don't move.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, former Home Office Minister Lord Greenall joins me after a dramatic day in Westminster. When will we get flights to Rwanda taking off? But first, it's time for the head-to-head. And on perhaps the most dramatic day of his premiership, Rishi Sunak has staved off a potentially fatal rebellion with his Rwanda bill passing in the Commons by a majority of 44 votes. So, after his victory tonight, is it time to get behind Rishi and Rwanda? Let me know your thoughts. Email me now, gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at GBNews. We've got a poll running on this right now on Twitter. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But to debate this, I'm joined by the Conservative MP for Shipley, Philip Davies, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Chaps, thank you very much. Looking forward to this. Look, Philip, I'll start with you. I mean, is it time now for everyone in the Tory party and people looking to vote Conservative to get behind Rishi, get behind Rwanda?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. I mean, we're in danger here of sleepwalking into a Labour government. Keir Starmer's hoping to win the next election by saying nothing, doing nothing, and hoping that nobody notices. And it's incumbent on all of us in the Conservative Party to get that behind the Prime Minister, and actually turn our guns, rather than on ourselves, turn them on the Labour Party and actually highlight the fact that there's a complete vacuum at the heart of their policy making, and people are going to wake up potentially too late if we're not careful. So, look, the thing is, Patrick, the Conservative Party is actually completely united on the whole issue of illegal immigration. We are all united in the view that we want to stop illegal immigration, and also that we think that sending them to Rwanda, a third country, is actually the right solution. The Conservative Party in Parliament is united in that belief. Now, obviously, we all have our own particular opinions about whether or not this bill will be wholly effective or whether it could be improved and all the rest of it. but we're completely united in that desire to stop illegal immigration and do what it takes. The Labour Party, on the other hand, don't want to stop it and certainly don't want to deport anybody.
All right, OK, Aaron, I'll throw it over to you on this. I mean, I suppose the flip side for you would be, is this been a crushing defeat for Keir Starmer, really, and the Labour Party? Is it time, do you think, that the Tories are just going to get behind this now?
Well, I suppose the question I'd put back to the both of you, I suppose, and also to your audience is, why are the Conservatives talking so much about Rwanda? Now, I know many people care very deeply about illegal immigration, and I'm sure for many of your viewers and your listeners, one person coming into this country illegally is one too many. But here are the numbers. So far this year, 27,000 people have come over to the UK on small boats, 27,000. Meanwhile, in the last 2 years, through legal migration, I'll repeat that, legal migration, we've had net immigration to this country of 1.3 million. So 27,000 versus 1.3 million. Legally. There is a reason why the Conservatives are so relentlessly focused on Rwanda and small boats. And that's because they want to take attention away from the huge failure on their watch, because we know that Conservative voters, more than anything else, care about migration. And yet, legal migration has gone up 1.3 million, or we've had net immigration to this country of 1.3 million over 2 years. So that's a catastrophic failure. And the reason why we're having this legislation, the reason why the spotlight is going on to Rwanda, agree or disagree with the policy, the reason why there is so much emphasis on it is to distract from failures elsewhere.
Yeah, OK, look, Philip, come back to that then.
Well, the thing is, I'm slightly surprised at Aaron. I thought he was all for bringing people in from abroad, and actually the government, what he seems to have missed is the government agrees, we all agree, that legal immigration is far too high in this country, and that's why I think only last week the government announced new rules which will prevent 300,000 a year from coming into the country who otherwise could come in before. These were the immigration numbers that you describe are ones that Rishi Sunak inherited as Prime Minister, not created, and now he's introduced new rules, stopping dependence of people, increasing the amount of money that people have to earn before they come into the country. So he's already taken action to deal with the high level of legal immigration, and now he's taking action to deal with illegal immigration, both of which, I might add, are massive issues for voters, even if the Labour Party haven't yet noticed that.
I mean, the thing is, Aaron, look, like it or loathe it, the Rwanda plan is a plan, OK? And I think Philip does have a point, does he not, when he says that actually the Tories are united behind it. What they just want is to make sure that it gets through the courts and actually planes get off the ground. You look at Keir Starmer, and he's saying that he'll scrap the plan the last I checked. I mean, what's the point of any of that? I mean, what do you get with Labour? At least the Tories have got a plan, I suppose.
So a few points. First of all, this plan, and it is just a plan, nobody's got on a plane yet. We're missing an E. It's going to cost so far, by the end of, I think, next year, £300 million. We've already given them, I think, the best part of £150 million. Nobody has got on a plane, £150 million. For all your viewers, again, listeners who are engaging with this and perhaps agree with Philip and disagree with me, how many deals do you do where you give somebody £150 million and you get nothing in return so far? That's my first kind of pushback, really, on that question. I've raised the point around legal migration. And when Britain voted for Brexit in 2016, whether you voted Leave or Remain, everybody thought that would mean lower migration. Everybody. Even the people who were the staunchest Remainers. That's why they opposed getting Brexit done, because they were terrified about, a different kind of economic and political way of running this country.
Look, Aaron, I get what you're saying, mate, but I am going to push back on this a bit here, because I do really want to get you on this Rwanda-specific thing, right, which is that a vote for the Conservative Party at the moment is a vote for Rwanda, whether you like it or not, OK?
No,
a vote for the Labour Party is a vote for nothing, isn't it, on that, Aaron?
No, it's a vote. So far, it's a vote for spending £150 million for nothing. That's what it is so far.
OK.
If they deliver, Patrick, and by the way,
I've got to... Let Aaron... OK, go on, Philip.
I've got to nail this. I've got to nail this, though, Aaron, because the Labour Party wants to increase the amount of overseas aid that it gives. And it wants to increase the amount of overseas aid it gives to African countries. So it wants to actually give... Hold on a minute. It wants to actually give an extra £2 billion a year in overseas aid to African countries for nothing in return. And it's complaining about giving money to Rwanda where we're hoping for something in return. You can't have it both ways. You can't say we want to give overseas aid and get nothing in return for that, and that's fine, but complain about Rwanda where we're hoping to get something in return.
Aaron.
Well, I'd say that's a great point. But first of all, I don't think we should increase aid. I think most aid is a scam. I think unless it's humanitarian disasters or contraception or maternal health or clean drinking water, I think most of it's a scam. That's the first point. And secondly, Philip, the Foreign Secretary, your colleague David Cameron, although he's not an MP, he's a Lord, he wants to increase aid. He was committed after 2010 to keeping overseas aid to 0.7% of GDP. That was his hallmark policy. So I would have to push you back on that. And then finally, I'll make this point. There's lots of talk about how now we've had this thing go through Parliament, you know, and fair play to Rishi, right? They created this impression to be close. It wasn't close. Fair play to him. Very good politics behind all of it. But the reality is, we've had the Supreme Court in this country since 2009. It's actually very recent. My personal view, and the view of people I speak to who know about this stuff, they say you cannot get this legislation through as long as we have the Supreme Court. And nobody in the Tory party is saying get rid of the Supreme Court because they know that would be very hard. They'd have to really work for their supper to do that. And so I have a question for Philip. Does he believe, forget the European Convention of Human Rights, forget whether or not we're subject to European courts. We have a Supreme Court in this country.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court in this country defies Parliament, what would he do about it?
Go on, Philip, final word.
Well, Lord Sumption, who was a former member of the Supreme Court, has actually made it abundantly clear that if he states it clearly in the bill, and he said he's read the bill, and as far as he's concerned, it does state it perfectly clearly, the Supreme Court will accept the will of Parliament, because that's what happens. The Supreme Court doesn't make laws, it implements the law, and if Parliament makes its views clear, which it has done in this bill, it will implement it. But what we've heard from Aaron again, we've had a lot of bluster. There is not one plan to deport an illegal immigrant out of this country anywhere else. That is, the Labour Party does not believe in deporting any failed asylum seeker out of this country. That is the fact of the matter. And Aaron just blusters around and confirms the fact that they've got absolutely no plan to deal with illegal immigration at all.
All right, look, obviously we could carry this on, but unfortunately we are out of time. Both of you, thank you very much. It's a proper head-to-head. That's what we love to see. I really appreciate you both coming on. Thank you very much. The Conservative MP for Shipley there, Philip Davies, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. So, look, who do you agree with there? After MPs passed the Rwanda bill, is it time now to get behind Rishi and the Rwanda plan? Ali on Twitter says it's smoke and mirrors. The bill will change nothing. The government will claim it as a success. Rishi needs new ideas if he wants my vote. Jane on Twitter says, I'm totally in favour of the Rwanda plan, but I could never, ever get behind Rishi. Gosh, there's layers to this, isn't there, from me? Johnny on Twitter says, even if you are a lifelong Tory voter, surely you can agree that this Rwanda policy is absolutely mental. There is zero probability that a flight heads to Rwanda. We are a laughingstock. Yeah, the thing is, you can get behind Rwanda. You can get behind the idea that you don't want a Labour government. You can get behind the idea that Labour haven't got a clear plan on it. But the fact is, even if this goes through, is it going to work? Is it really going to work? But look, your verdict is in now. 43% of you agree that it is time to get behind Rishi and Rwanda. Wow, 57% of you say that it isn't. And that, I think, is actually a very good mirror of the nation, that on this. So keep your views coming in, of course. GBViews at gbnews.com. Loads to unpack here. But look, as the Saudis fight back against the phasing out of fossil fuels at COP28, who could have seen that coming, has the world's biggest virtue signalling summit been exposed as a complete and utter waste of time? Plus, is it OK to be proud about being fat? Not just a little bit fat, I mean, like, you know, really, really fat. GB News star Nana Akua joins with her strong views on that issue very, very shortly. But next, as Rishi rides out the Tory rights rebellion, are we actually any closer to flights getting off the ground? Will this ever happen? We hear from Policing Minister Chris Philp before former Home Office Minister Lord Greenall. This is what I want to know when I come back. When will flights to Rwanda take off? Don't move.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new
It's
teeth.
your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, let's get more reaction now to Rishi's Rwanda victory in the Commons, because I'm going to go over to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who caught up with Policing Minister Chris Phil. Let's find out what he had to say.
I think we're pleased in government to have had a very solid 44-vote win this evening. I think I'm right in saying that not a single Conservative voted against the bill this evening, which is a good result. This is, of course, the most comprehensive and far-reaching piece of immigration legislation this Parliament has ever passed.
You said that no Tory MPs voted against it, but plenty abstained. In fact, if those abstentions become MPs voting against it, you'll lose the bill at third reading.
Well, I think as the bill completes its passage, obviously the government will be listening in an open and constructive way to any sensible ideas members of Parliament have to make sure this bill is as tight as it can be.
How do you feel about that, actually? Not one Conservative MP voted against this. Interesting, isn't it, for all the bluster and all the guff that we had to put up with for a couple of days about, oh, this cannot stand, we're going to do this, we're going to get the Star Chamber involved. The Star Chamber, assemble the Star Chamber. Not a single person, not a sausage voted against this. Well, I'm joined now by Conservative peer and former Home Office Minister Lord Greenhalgh. Lord, thank you very much for joining me. When will any flights to Rwanda take off?
Well, this is the last chance saloon for these flights to take off before a general election. I can't say when, but if this bill doesn't pass, obviously it's not going to happen this side of the election.
What do you think the chances are of there being a flight, even if this bill passes, right, at the earliest opportunity, of there actually being a flight to Rwanda before the next election?
Well, I don't think that's the question how I frame it. I think the tension here is between those people that don't want to see any breach of international law, and that's where you saw the One Nation caucus come out, and those people that want a policy that acts as an effective deterrent, where you may step into disputes in terms of international law, but you will get the large number of illegal migrants to Rwanda. And the issue with this policy is that if it goes through and you pass the bill, that the Section 39 exclusions then come in, and we get a third plane that is empty, having spent many hundreds of millions on the policy. And that would be electoral disaster for the Conservatives. So that's where the concerns are coming in. It's not, it's the tension between staying the right side of international law and having an effective deterrent. And it doesn't seem to, seems to be some dispute as to whether that can be achieved with this policy.
That's so, exactly that, right? So are we now all just having massive rows, whether it's down the pub, in Parliament, in studios like this, over a bill that in any shape or form probably won't work? It complies with international law, won't be a deterrent because a handful of asylum seekers won't go.
That is exactly the reason why the Bill Minister until last week resigned. I worked for Robert, actually, because I was across his department in housing and also in the Home Office with Priti Patel when Boris was Prime Minister. And it's quite clear that he feels that it's not going to work, and he didn't want to put his time and effort and reputation on the line for a bill that he didn't think was going to work at the other end. And now there is some dispute about this, and you'll get loads of different legal opinions, but the Bill Minister looks at this very carefully. Obviously, Suella Braverman has come out and said much the same thing as a distinguished lawyer, and they'll have consulted their legal friends, and that's the rub. This is a policy that seems not to work without taking on the international legal framework.
But what happened? What changed? Because this time yesterday it was pull the bill. Pull the bill. You know, the five families, Don, Mark, Francois Leone and the five families were all saying, well, pull the bill, I want to pull it. And then today it's abstain. So what's happened?
Well, I think what's happened is that you've got to pay tribute to the Downing Street operation. I was in Parliament today, and the Prime Minister did a very good job. He was in reception for the 1922 this evening with the Chancellor, working the corridors, having breakfast meetings, and it clearly worked, and persuaded people that, he's open to improvements to the bill. And this is second reading, it's not the end game, and he lives to fight another day. Tomorrow he comes to see the peers in the Association of Conservative Peers to explain to us why we should be supporting the bill. So, a great effort on the ground by the Prime Minister and his team. You've got to pay tribute to that. No one thought they were going to get a 44 vote majority.
I just wonder now whether or not, whilst that's true, obviously, it's a big victory for Rishi Sunak. He'll be sleeping very well tonight. He's outperformed what many people thought, and he deserves a heck of a lot of credit for that. I just wonder if the focus now turns to the Tory right and people say you were bought off with a bacon sandwich at 8 o'clock this morning.
Well, I think when you abstain, you're basically keeping your powder dry. You recognise you're not going to knock the bill down, but equally, this is not the final curtain call. So, I don't think this is all over yet by any means, and the issues with the bill remain. So and I have to say, the Prime Minister faces a very uphill struggle with the Lords, where you've got lots of lawyers, lots of opinions, and an inbuilt opposition majority. So this is not an easy bill to get through Parliament.
OK, right, look, one last final one with you, and I am just going to press you on this. I don't know if you're a betting man or not. All right, look, £10, does a flight take off to Rwanda before the next election? You can roll your eyes. It's what everyone's asking. It's what everyone wants to know.
I think the bill. I think the bill, if it does pass, the worst situation is a flight that is supposed to take off and it ends up virtually empty. That would be catastrophic for the Conservatives. So I hope that if it does pass, it works. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time.
Look, I appreciate it. You've been a good sport as well, and thank you very much for that insight. That is Lord Greenhouse there. Former Home Office Minister, Conservative peer. Look, what do you make of that? GBViews at GBNews.com. I do wonder if the focus does shift away now from Rishi Sunak into whether or not the Tory right have been bought off a bit here. How does that make you feel? Maybe I'm being completely unfair. Maybe they've done the responsible thing for their party. But coming up, after Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan eased through the Commons, are the so-called five families now nothing more than bottle jobs? Find out in my mono shortly, where I say that the British public are being taken for fools. But next, Rishi Sunak hauled his climate minister to vote on the Rwanda bill, despite crunch talks from the Saudis at COP28. Is net zero now doomed to failure? Plus, are we about to see the rise of so-called fat pride here in the UK? Find out why in a second. GB News star Nana Aquia hits out at our snowflake society. You don't want to miss it.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
More forensic analysis of this explosive Rwanda vote coming up. But time now for GB News' darling, Nana Aquia. Just days after the President of Climate Summit COP28 stunned the world by saying there was no science behind the demands to phase out fossil fuels, the gathering in Dubai is now being dubbed a complete and utter waste of time after countries failed to agree a new climate change tackling deal. Host nation, the UAE, said it was angling for a new draft agreement for 200 nations to agree on amid a huge row over the demonisation of fossil fuels. A UK government spokesperson said this draft is disappointing and does not go far enough. The UK position is clear. There must be a phase-out of unabated fossil fuels to meet with our climate needs. But the likes of oil king Saudi Arabia have obviously led the charge against gas and coal being phased out. Nana, thank you very, very much. Look, should we be surprised that the world's biggest virtue signalling conference has turned into a load of hot air?
Well, I couldn't be more delighted that finally people are speaking up and saying there is no confirmed science behind this. This is all based on modelling. And we saw how well modelling went with COVID. I mean, look, if you put the wrong things into a model, you're going to get the wrong things out. Frankly, it's no surprise that this has happened. First of all, the COP president is a guy called Al Jaber. He's the head of the state-owned Saudi company called ADNOC. They're an oil and gas company. In fact, most of the oil and gas companies are owned by the state because the Saudis, they're not stupid. Why would you sell off all your biggest assets to private enterprises. And of course, it was rumoured that the conference was used as a way of sort of negotiating others to stop using fossil fuels so they could sell the fossil fuel to the people who were at the conference. It's absurd. I'm so glad. Finally, money talks and the rest of it walks. And frankly, people are coming to the realisation that without fossil fuels, we will be bankrupt.
I mean, the idea that there is such an emergency going on, Nana, that everybody needs to take private jets there and back, and one MP can take a private jet there and back in the same day, we think, so we can vote on a bill in Parliament that ironically would see more flights taking off. I mean, it's almost like, Nana, it's almost like maybe there is an absolute existential emergency going on.
Well, look, I mean, Rishi Sunak went to COP and he spent more time flying there and back than he did at the conference itself. Almost 80,000 people went there. It's a jolly. Most of them flew by private jets, as you said, Patrick. The King went in his own jet, fair enough. David Cameron in his own jet. Rishi Sunak. It's like, hold on a minute, how stupid do you think we are? Then they're all chatting in the oil-rich country of Dubai.
Yeah.
Hello.
The only benefit for them, Nana, the only benefit genuinely for them, but having it there, was that is a country that bans protesters. So the likes of Greta Thunberg and Just Stop Oil could turn up and they just get carted straight off to prison. But look, I know you're going to get stuck into this because so-called fat pride is sweeping America as Colorado becomes the first state in 50 years to pass laws combating fat phobia. Politicians are planning rules that will add a person's weight to the list of characteristics such as age, race and sexual orientations that are protected from discrimination. An employer who fails to give an oversized desk, for example, to a chubby worker could well find themselves being sued. And it comes as a plus-size TikToker who calls herself Big Curvy Olivia shared a video calling out United Airlines for discriminating against her. Nana, what's going on?
Oh, for goodness sake, look. First of all, fat shaming is totally wrong. Okay, so you don't be horrible to people because they're overweight. That's not on. But the reason why people are, why governments and people like me encourage people to be a healthy weight, it's because of health. A healthy weight, that's the clue. Obesity is one of the biggest killers, if not the biggest killer. It costs the NHS a fortune. And I don't understand why people should see obesity as an illness, because it's an illness. Because the problem with it is it brings along other things, heart disease, high cholesterol. It brings along things like cancer. It is costing us as a nation and the world a fortune. So to encourage employers to encourage it is madness. If you fit on 2 seats on a plane, you should pay for 2 seats. The plane can't make a couple of massive seats on the plane. People
I mean, it's no secret. It's no secret to anyone. I've struggled with my weight from time to time. No doubt I will again. But I think it's that fine line, isn't it, between not being overtly mean to people, but also at the same time not encouraging them to live an unhealthy lifestyle and, wanting them to improve as well. Look, Nana, thank you very, very much. Short and sweet, I'm afraid, Nana. Very sorry, but thank you very much. Great to have you on. That's Nana Akua there, of course. Right, coming up now, after French school teachers go on strike over threats from Muslim parents, should Europe be pushing back now against fundamental Islam? We're going to have another head-to-head on this with Dr. Akib Hassan going head-to-head with the Imam and broadcaster Ajmal Masroor. But next, with Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan flying through the Commons, have the self-proclaimed 5 families been exposed as cowards? I'll be teeing off on that very, very shortly. You won't want to miss it.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Drier and clearer weather will move into northwestern areas, bringing a frosty start to Wednesday for some of us, but it's going to stay drizzly and quite dull across eastern areas. That's as this area of low pressure that's brought an unsettled day today pushes into the east, where it will linger through much of the day. That will mean that we've got continued heavy rain across eastern areas through the course of this evening. There's still a rain warning in force for that across parts of northeastern England and eastern Scotland. Ahead of of that rain, though, across the southeast, we'll see quite a lot of cloud develop overnight, so quite a murky night here. A different story, though, further north and west, where we'll see clear spells allowing a frost and potentially some icy patches by tomorrow morning. And then that clearer, drier weather becomes slightly more widespread through the course of Wednesday, spreading into parts of northern England, as well as Wales and the southwest of England as well. Further east, though, it stays cloudy with drizzly rain through much of the day, so quite a dull and damp day, with drizzly rain developing in the southeast by the end of the day and feeling fairly cool as well. In the northwest, though, it will feel fairly pleasant in sunshine despite the colder start to the day. A chilly start in the southeast on Thursday morning, but it will soon cloud over as the next area of rain arrives. However, the heaviest rain will be much more limited, as that is because high pressure is starting to build in for Friday and into the weekend as well. So that means we'll see more in the way of dry weather, and temperatures will rise by day and by night. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
We have decided collectively that we cannot support the bill tonight.
The Tory rebellion that never was, and the Rwanda bill has passed, a victory for Rishi Sunak. The right are demanding amendments. This time yesterday, they wanted them to pull the bill. What's changed? I'm also asking, was Nigel Farage right?
Backbenchers have the guts to vote it down. Well, normally, they march up to the top of the hill and they march back down again. Most of them are a pretty spineless bunch.
Well, and how can we forget? It's 4 years since this happened.
Let's get Brexit done. But first, my friends, let's get breakfast done too. Thank you all.
What a waste of a massive landslide. Would you take Boris back? But also tonight, an asylum seeker reportedly took their own life on the Bibby Stockholm barge. Tragic, if true. We await the full facts. But does that change your view now of this detention boat? Elsewhere, should Europe push back against fundamentalist Islamism now? Teachers are currently on strike in France after Muslim parents kicked off about a Renaissance painting containing nudity, and find out why the pathetic lefty whingers want to cancel a bakery. Yep, a bakery. I've got all of tomorrow's front pages today in the liveliest paper review you'll get anywhere on the telly. On my sofa tonight, we've got Ranald Jayawardena, Suzanne Evans and Ivan Sampson. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Anything can happen. Email me now, gbviews@gbnews.com. Is it time to back Rishi's Rwanda plan? I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story tonight, as you've been hearing, the Prime Minister has secured something of a victory tonight in the House of Commons, with MPs backing his flagship Rwanda plan. Here's how it went.
Order. Order. The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Unlocked.
Well, the government described it as the toughest legislation ever to be presented to Parliament. Tonight's crunch vote was seen also as a test of Rishi Sunak's leadership. A political rebellion from the right wing had threatened to defeat the bill at its second reading, but with that majority of 44 votes, the Prime Minister said on social media a short time afterwards that he'll now get on with making it law to get flights going to Rwanda and to stop the boats. Now, in other news today, schools waiting for an Ofsted inspection can now defer the visit until after the new year, and all requests will be granted. It comes after the result of a coroner's report into the death of former head teacher Ruth Perry. It found that an inspection by Ofsted, which downgraded her school to inadequate over safeguarding concerns, which likely contributed to taking her own life. Two school leaders' unions say simply granting inspection deferrals to schools at the end of term doesn't go far enough. The pace of wage growth has eased by more than expected, but UK employment remains unchanged. The Office for National Statistics saying today that wages rose by 7.3% in the 3 months to October. That's down from 7.8%. It's the steepest fall in earnings growth since November 2021. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said it's positive to see inflation continue to fall and real wages growing. Meanwhile, plans to relocate more than 20,000 civil service jobs outside London will be brought forward to 2027. The move of jobs from the capital had originally been set to 2023. Plans to open second headquarters for several departments in Aberdeen, Darlington and Greater Manchester will now be accelerated, ministers say. It's a sign, they add, of the government's commitment to levelling up. Now, the maker of some of the most iconic British brands is facing an investigation over its environmental claims. Unilever, whose products include Dove, Lynx and Marmite, is being inspected by the UK watchdog over its so-called green status amid concerns the firm is misleading shoppers. The Competition and Markets Authority said the £140 billion company may be overstating how environmentally friendly some of its cleaning products are. Weather news, and the week of washouts is set to continue. More flood warnings are in place across parts of the country. Somerset, the Dorset coast and parts of Yorkshire expected to be worst affected by the downpours. There are also yellow weather warnings in place for South East Scotland and the North East of England, with forecasts for hail, thunder and more heavy rain. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Bottle jobs, cowards, time wasters. Not my words, of course, just the views of some after the Tory right marched up the hill and then back down it again over Rwanda, just as Nigel Farage predicted.
Backbenchers have the guts to vote it down. Well, normally they march up to the top of the hill and they march back down again. Most of them are a pretty spineless bunch.
Well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and I think that's what's happening here, isn't it? If you keep playing Bertie Big Balls and then you don't back it up, you start to lose credibility. We have the Tory right wing, of course, convening the Star Chamber. These intense legal gurus who are going to forensically analyse the Rwanda bill, see if it met their tests. Then they said it didn't meet their tests and the government should pull the bill. They've got to pull it. We can't have this. It'll be held up in the courts. Nobody will go to Rwanda. We won't have a deterrent. Then Rishi Sunak invites them to Downing Street for bacon butties this morning, and all of a sudden the talk of pulling the bill goes away. It evaporated like steam off my urine on a freezing cold day. Then there was a meeting of the 5 families of the right-wing groups. The leader, here he is, Mark Don Francois Leone, the boss of the 5 families. There he is. I mean, he did look like he was revelling in it, didn't he?
I have just chaired a meeting of what you in the media are now referring to as the 5 families in the Wilson room.
Don Francois Leone kept the nation on tenterhooks all day, building the drama, building the tension. The tension had been mounting ever since he made this bold statement yesterday.
We have decided collectively that we cannot support the bill tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there we go again. That was, of course, him earlier today, wasn't it? Don Francois Leone is about to take the Prime Minister to task on this. He's gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. What are you going to do, Don?
Both of us will abstain.
What? Oh, right. You're going to abstain. It's just that you... Oh, right. I just thought you wanted to pull the bill because it's too hard to amend, and now you... It's just we've been going on about this all day, haven't we, Don? You know? And now you're going to abstain, are you? All right, and you'll just accept that he'll make the amendments that you want. Do you think maybe you bottled it a bit, mate? The fact is that a huge amount of stink has been caused today. The government nearly ripped itself apart for nothing, for the tentative support for a bill that won't work on the promise that it will be amended to form a new, better bill that still won't work. The big losers here are the British public. It's you and me. The reason why the Tory right blinked is because it would have brought down Sunak, which will have caused the general election and probably would have seen Labour in Downing Street, which I'm convinced we'll just have to deal with for a few years anyway before maybe a proper Conservative government actually emerges. But just think, 4 years ago today, Boris Johnson won a landslide general election, and now here we are. They're fighting like cats in a sack. They'll get their Christmas break, of course, now, and then there'll be another argument over amendments in January or February or whenever it comes, and we'll be in exactly the same position again with Don Francois Leone threatening to vote against it, the One Nation lot backing it, Labour revelling in the chaos despite not having a plan themselves. We are called Great Britain, all right? The public are great. I think some of our politicians are bloody useless, actually. They are showing utter contempt for the people who pay their wages by stringing us along like this. Sort it out or get lost. Well, to respond to this now, I am rather awkwardly joined by former Environment Secretary Randall Trial-Wardner, Conservative MP. I've also got political commentator Suzanne Evans, not referring to you, of course, Randall. Political commentator Suzanne Evans, a specialist immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Randall, I will come to you first. Have I been far too harsh there?
Well, what you're absolutely right to say is that this is an important issue for the British public, and we all get that. The question today was, how do we get those flights to Rwanda going? And, you know, my group that I chair, the Growth Group, we took a very different view from Mark. We took the view that actually, quite early on, that the way to do this is to amend it in committee. So, the reasonable right today took the view that actually let's have those discussions, let's have that debate in January. I'm afraid, actually, the really unreasonable part of Parliament is the left, it's the Labour Party, and, you know, Keir Starmer has rejected tighter rules on asylum 14 times since he was elected, abstained 22 times. That's the threat to this country.
OK, all right, Suzanne, it says on the screen there, did the Rwanda rebels bottle it, did they?
I think they did. I think you were spot on, actually, Patrick. I'm actually, as a kind of ordinary voter, really looking at all this, somebody that wants to control immigration and stop the boats. I look at this and I just think, what a farce. We had 3 Home Secretaries go to Rwanda, not a single migrant's gone to Rwanda. It's cost about 50 million so far. We've wasted all this parliamentary time. We've been talking about it endlessly for years. Like I said, the day I see a Rwanda flight get off is the day I will be almightily surprised. I just don't think it's going to happen. You said earlier, Ivan, that the whole point of this bill was as a deterrent to these people coming over in boats so they didn't come anymore. We know Chris White did some amazing reporting for GB News last week. He interviewed them. They don't give a damn about whether or not they're going to be sent to Rwanda. It is not a deterrent. It's a waste of parliamentary time and it's a waste of British taxpayers'
Just before I come to you, Ivan, let's just remind ourselves of what Mark Francois said yesterday, OK? So let's have that.
So the bill as drafted, is not really fit for purpose. So the consensus of a meeting of 5 different backbench groups that I've just finished chairing was that the government, rather than plough on regardless, would be better to pull the bill and to come back with a better draft that doesn't have all these holes in it.
Right. But that changed, didn't it? That changed massively. Ivor, what do you think happened there? You know, especially with your legal hat on, do you think anything has gone on behind the scenes there?
Well, look, the law hasn't changed from yesterday to today. Robert Jenrick, who created this bill, he was the mastermind behind it. His boss, Suella Braverman, was involved in it. Both of them have said it's legally flawed. Obviously, I think there's been some back deals done between Rishi Sunak. You've got to give credit to Rishi for today. You have to. He's pulled it round, having series of meetings, probably in the corridors in the House of Commons, and bringing people on board. But the problem is there's going to be a showdown, Patrick. There's going to be a showdown at the OK Supreme Court corral between the judges and the politician. That's where we're heading.
Yeah, it's Groundhog Day, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's just Groundhog Day, and we're all suffering. Ronald, I'm going to put a clip to you now, if that's all right, which is, I believe we've got Liam Fox, who had a couple of bits and bobs to say earlier on. Let's have it.
Was Bill Cash wrong to be concerned about it? Is Mark Francois wrong? He's a colleague of yours on the right of the party.
Well, no piece of legislation is perfect, and we'll want to see it committed whether it can be improved. But what we can't have is grandstanding on these issues. We have to get on and govern. And as I say to colleagues, in politics, follow your heart, but do take your brain with you.
So he's with you, I think, Ronald. He's saying we can't have grandstanding on this. I'm assuming, reading between the lines there, he is talking about the kind of grandstanding we saw from, Don Francois Leone earlier on. Well,
Colleagues, I think, today have made the right call by not voting it down. So that, of course, is a decision that people have taken, and I welcome that. I think Liam is exactly right. We've got to get on and govern, and the way to do that is to look at amending this bill. But, here's the thing, that actually it's not a showdown between parliamentarians and the judges in the first instance. There are 2 other moments. The first is when this comes back to committee in the House of Commons in January, where if it isn't tightened up, there will be many people that will vote against it. And the second is the House of Lords, because the House of Lords is full of lefty lawyers, and they will want to try and reject it and send it back, aided by the Labour MPs in the House of Commons. Not a single one of them voted for it. Can I get some clarity before I open it up to the rest of the panel? What does tightening it up mean? So at the moment, there are too many concerns that there will be individual claims made, whereas at the moment, you can actually make it on a much wider basis. So it has tightened it up in the right direction. There is further to go to make sure that ministerial decisions, for example, can't be taken to judges, slow the whole process down and undo the great purpose of this bill.
Right. Can I give clarity on the individual claims? It's not going to happen. Look.
Well, in your view. All right,
you have to read the law. You have to read the text. The text says that individuals on their personal circumstances, notwithstanding, not excluding that Rwanda is a safe country, so they can't make it on the grounds that it's not safe for me there. They can only make challenges on the grounds of my personal circumstances. So let me think of something I could say. I don't like flying, right? Yeah. I hate flying, so you can't take me to Rwanda. I mean, that's what we're talking about. So wait, that could happen here? Well, I don't think that's going to sway the judges, but the point is, the bar is so high that there's not going to be any individual challenge. That is not the problem. The problem is the incompatibility of the bill with European courts and the right of the European courts to intervene. That is the problem. And then you have clause 5, which says that ministers can overrule an injunction application, but if a minister does that, guess what will happen? Appellants will run off to the High Court again and judicial review it. So, we're going to have a year of this.
OK, Ronald, and then I'll give final word to Suzanne.
So this is exactly the point. This is where the bill needs to be tightened up. So those ministers, acting on behalf of this country and on behalf of Parliament, can make decisions knowing that lefty lawyers are not going to undo their work.
All right, go on.
You can't tighten up because of the ECHR. It won't work. They are always going to effectively rip it to pieces.
Can I just ask you something? You know, look, I don't know about how our viewers feel on this as well. Do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. I'm just flipping sick of it. I'm sick of it. You know, it's been going on and on and on. And, you know, we get into the granular detail of a legal text. I understand that is important. I'm not so stupid that I don't think that matters at all. It does matter. But, you know, we are years on from this first being proposed as an idea. We're back here again today. And this is after the whole Brexit fiasco, by the way, where you've got, you know, the 5 families, whatever the heck that means now, you know, teeing up, going, oh, we're going to abstain on this, we're going to defer it again till January or February. I just think, Susan, most ordinary people want an end to this.
Yeah, everybody wants an end to it. The boats are still coming. All this faffing about with Rwanda, what we need to do is stop the boats. We need to take the approach that Australia took, and I agree that will involve getting out of the ECHR, but that's the only way. It worked in Australia, it will work here. Stop the boats, turn them back, repair them if they scuttle them, send them back on their way. Until we can do that, this saga is going to continue. I also think it's a bit of a smokescreen.
All right.
You know, we've got legal migration running at 745,000. The boats and the numbers pale into insignificance compared to that.
Well, a little bit later on, we're going to have you all back here because we're going to be giving you a first look at tomorrow's front pages today and what's inside the book as well, in the liveliest newspaper review that you will get anywhere on television. So I think we can guess what some of them might say on the front pages. So it could be another good discussion and debate there. But, yeah, there's also an explosive story hitting the headlines about Harry and Meghan's finances that you won't want to miss. But next, French teachers are striking after receiving threats from Muslim parents simply for showing a nude Renaissance painting in an art class. So, should Europe push back against fundamental Islam? British imam and broadcaster Ajmal Masroor and the author and expert in social cohesion, Dr. Rakib Hassan, they go head-to-head in just a moment. Also, how would you, lucky people, like the chance to win 10,000 quid in cash, brand new tech and shopping vouchers? Well, you could be the very first winner of our very first Great British Giveaway. Here's all the details and how you can make those prizes yours.
It's the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win 3 amazing prizes that will get your new year off to a great start. First, there's a terrific £10,000 in cash to be won. Imagine what you can do with that. We'll also give you a tech update with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, plus £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store. The retail therapy could be on us. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Right, OK, good stuff there. It's a shame I can't sign up. But anyway, coming up, should Europe now draw a line under things and push back against fundamental Islam? A fiery debate is coming your way. That's next.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I will bring you the very first of tomorrow's front pages very soon. But first, it's time for another head-to-head. So, teachers at a French school have gone on strike, saying that they fear for their lives after a furious backlash from Muslim pupils and parents over a French Renaissance painting. A teacher at the ISS 000 school near Paris, yeah, there we go, showed a class of 12 and 13-year-olds the painting dating back to 1603 called Diana and Actaeon during an art appreciation class. As you can tell, I do not really appreciate Renaissance art, otherwise I would have known how to pronounce that, before false rumours circulated that she had singled out Muslims for insult and made racist comments. That led to a coordinated hate campaign being launched against the teacher on social media, with one colleague saying, "We're dealing with vindictive parents who prefer to believe their children than us." Now, important timing here, because this comes just days after 6 French teenagers were convicted for their roles in the 2020 Islamist beheading of a French schoolteacher called Samuel Paty, after he offended, allegedly, Muslim pupils. And tensions seem to be growing across Europe. Sweden has closed Islamic schools. Switzerland is banning the burqa. Both France and Belgium have witnessed Islamist killings of teachers and football fans recently, all within the last few months. So, should Europe start pushing back big time against fundamental Islam, especially in schools? To debate this now, I am joined by British Imam and broadcaster Ajmal Masroor, up against author and expert in social cohesion, Dr. Rakib Hassan. Look, both of you, thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to this debate. Dr. Rakib, I'll start with you. Does Europe have to push back against fundamental Islam? Is there something here that needs pushing back against?
Well, it's something that I've talked about on a number of occasions, that we have a very serious problem in various European societies when it comes to Islamist extremism. But I wouldn't necessarily treat this particular episode as a form of Islamist extremism, and I'll explain why, Patrick. So we're talking about 17th century Renaissance era painting. According to the BBC, this painting was shown in a classroom involving pupils as young as 11. Sorry. So I do think in that kind of situation, socially conservative parents do have a right to raise their concerns over those kind of materials being shown in the classroom. And I think that, of course, there's a debate to be had in terms of to degree of independence schools should have in terms of which materials they can show, how much involvement parents should have when it comes to the education that their children provide. But I do think France, and I think this is actually where the UK fares much better, France has a very serious issue when it comes to its rigidly secular model of Republican universalism and the very existence of socially conservative minorities in the country who face very real forms of discrimination, Patrick, but they often go unnoticed largely because of this rigid, colourblind egalitarianism in France.
All right, I'll throw it over to you now, British Imam and broadcaster Ajmal Masroor. Look, we are seeing, I would suggest, maybe, the desire potentially by some quarters of the Islamic community to try to impose their sensibilities and norms on the existing society. Is that something that you agree with, and should that be pushed back upon?
I think, firstly, I want to thank Rakib for his point. I agree with most of what he has said. I think the fact that Muslim communities in France are less than 10% of the population, and yet if you were to look at the census figure, you would find 67,500 currently behind bars prison population happen to have 70% Muslims. I mean, there is something fundamentally gone wrong with the French model of integration, French model of bringing minorities together. I call France a secular extremist country, a secular fundamentalist country. We have secular country, Britain. We have secular countries in other parts of the world. You don't have to impose your value on anybody. Secularism, or pluralism as I call it, is about allowing the open space for people to discuss and debate, have dialogue, and accept to live with one another, even with our differences. And if France wants to create a monolith of French citizens, whether they're Muslims, Christians, or people of faith and no faith, they will fail, because people are by nature not one type. We are all different. So we don't need to push anything back, just so that you're reassured. Muslim community is a very small community, both in the UK and France, and we are very happy to integrate. And
Is that true, though? See, the thing is, I hear what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I'm sorry, I just don't know if that's true. Dr.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you at all.
A rumour goes round that a teacher, Dr. Rakib, a rumour goes around that a teacher has shown a picture of the Prophet Muhammad to somebody, gets beheaded. I mean, that's not normal behaviour, is it, in a normal country? Is that not something that is worth pushing back on?
No, absolutely. And I've made very clear, Patrick, that in the UK, the principal terror threat continues to be presented by Islamist extremism. But what we're talking about here is a case of how schools are governed, what kind of materials can be used in classrooms. And in the French context, it has a militant, in my view, militant secular model, which is very difficult to reconcile with the existence of socially conservative religious minorities. So French civil society has to have a very serious debate in terms of how it integrates its diverse communities. And one thing that I would say, Patrick, I think this should be a source of national pride, that certainly compared to countries such as France, along with other European countries such as Germany and the Netherlands, the UK actually performs very well when it comes to the provision of anti-discrimination protections on the grounds of race, ethnicity and religion, and is a land of considerable religious freedoms. Now, of course, those freedoms are not there to be exploited and taken advantage of. But I think we should take pride in the successes that we've had in terms of integrating our diverse communities.
Ajmal, do you think that there is any truth whatsoever to the idea that certain aspects of the Muslim community don't really want to integrate, they want to impose their norms and values and religious views on whatever society it is they live in?
Well, I could give you examples of English Defence League or the National Front wanting to impose their ways on the rest of us, their fringe groups from the non-Muslim society. So every society will have their rotten apples. We don't brush all the communities because of their bad behavior. By far, if you were to look at France, and if this is the example, and a survey was done, and it was published in the University of Life 2023 report recently, of 1,074 people who left France and moved into other countries in Europe. And they were asked, 2/3 of them reported that they moved because they were not able to practice their religion freely. And 70% said they moved because they were facing extreme racial discrimination in France. I'm very proud that in Britain we don't have that. And we don't need to follow the French model, because French model is creating a lot of apathy, unemployment, discrimination, unrest, etc. What France needs to do is follow our model and say, okay, Britain's got it right. How can we improve and not be secular fundamentalist as they have become known in the world? It's not getting anything anywhere, and they're not getting any brownie points either.
OK, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. Great stuff, that. Really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people have learnt a lot, myself included. That was Dr. Rakib Hassan and Ajmal Masroor as well. And we will be continuing this discussion in the inbox, gbviews@gbnews.com. Get those views coming in. Coming up, though, I want your thoughts on this much talked about Ricky Gervais joke that some people are calling his most disgusting ever. Don't miss that. I will play the clip in full very shortly. But next, in the most lively newspaper review that you'll find anywhere on national television, we will rattle through the best of tomorrow's front pages, share the big headlines setting the news agenda, including a startling revelation about Harry and Meghan's finances, and also, as well, some additional information about what may not have happened on the Bibby Stockholm barge earlier today. See you in a tick.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think it might be my favourite bit of the show now, where we get to bring you tomorrow's news tonight in the most entertaining paper review anywhere on the telly. The very first front pages have just been delivered for my press pack. So we go in with the Metro. Rishi saves his bacon. Breakfast butties do the trick as Rwanda flight rebels fail... ... for now. Let's go over to the Independent. Sunak wins Rwanda vote and lives to lose another day. There we go. Relieved PM avoids defeat of flagship deportation bill in critical Commons showdown. That bit he'll obviously be happy with. William Hague has warned we may never win back power. There's a big picture story there of Harry and Meghan on the front. Their charity in £500,000 loss, hit by an £8.5 million drop in donations. Big story that for all the wrong reasons for them. The Eye. Sunak survives Rwanda revolt to set up New Year's showdown with Tory rebels. The theme here, isn't it, which is that we're kicking the can down the road somewhat. The Guardian. Sunak avoids major rebellion over Rwanda deportation bill for now. Yet very much a theme here, isn't there? Israel losing support over Gaza bombing, says Joe Biden. The Daily Mail. Sunak sees off the Tory Rwanda rebels. Can you guess what comes next? For now, it's like it's all been written by the same person, these headlines, isn't it? Rishi Sunak headed off a Tory mutiny, but obviously the worst is potentially still to come. So there we go. There is the Telegraph as well. Sunak faces down Rwanda rebels, they say. Big picture of Rishi Sunak with the Union flag behind him. There is a story that I am particularly interested, though, in the Telegraph, which is away from the Rwanda discussion, because we've been talking about this a heck of a lot. And to pick through this, it is... Also in the Telegraph, migrant dies on barge in suspected suicide. And they are talking about the Bibi Stockholm barge. It's a story that broke earlier today. I'm going to get to this now with my press pack. I've got former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena, I've got political commentator Suzanne Evans and specialist immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Yeah, Ranil, I'll start with you on this then. I mean, apparently there was a call at 6:44 a.m. this morning that one of the men on board, the Bibi Stockholm, had essentially, well, it says here, killed himself. Obviously, we're awaiting official confirmation. I mean, does this change your views on the Bibi Stockholm barge, do you think?
Well, first of all, this is a great tragedy because the loss of any human life, particularly by suicide, as it's suggested is here, is just terrible. And, you know, whoever you are, you know, wherever people are from, I think we must all have that compassion. But I do have to say that, you know, everyone who is on the Bibi Stockholm does get a medical assessment, is looked at for emotional trauma and so on. So I think the standards that there are in this process are robust. And actually, this just underlines the human tragedy from not having properly controlled borders in the first place. You know, we need to have more of a deterrent to stop people crossing that very dangerous channel where, sadly, lives are lost, to stop people being housed in this country at all, and actually to get the flights taking off.
All right, now, Suzanne, I mean, as you can imagine, the noises now are this was an accident, a tragedy waiting to happen, this is awful, it shows, you know, how evil people are for wanting a migrant barge in the first place. I'm not saying these are my views, I'm saying this is what's going on online. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very easy, isn't it, to jump to conclusions that it was the fact that this man was housed on a barge is what led to the suicide. We have no idea what his background was. We have no idea whether he had mental health problems before we arrived here. As Ranil says, a suicide, I think, is always particularly tragic. But for goodness sake, we just don't know the history here. And this, again, is part of the problem. When we've got people coming over in these boats, we have no idea what their background is, and yet somehow we're expected to be able to support them, pay for them, look after them in a way that's frankly, I think, asking too much of the state.
OK. Ivan, I'm trying to remember from our previous conversations where you're at on the barge debate. Are you... Yes. Do you think it breaks all kind of human rights laws?
No, well, no, I don't think it does. I think it's not unsafe or breaks any health and safety regulations. But the point I wanted to make about people being locked up or having nothing to do, we all remember what it was like during the pandemic, how we went nuts, didn't we? We didn't have anything to do. And these people are not allowed to work. And I've always campaigned for asylum seekers to have a normal life while their asylum applications are pending, which happens in America. So they can go and work and have a normal life as best they can. These people are in those barges, can go and visit the town, have a walk around and come back again. There's nothing else to do. So, but we don't know what happened and what the reasons were.
All right,
but
I could see you kind of screwing your face up a little bit about that. Go on.
Well, look, I mean, I understand where Ivan's coming from in terms of clearly being confined is something that challenges us all. But the important thing is we don't create pull factors that encourage more people to come here in the first place, because I think that just exacerbates the problem that we're seeing here.
And also, we're again pushing people into our economy who are paid very low wages and taking jobs off people who are already here. And I'm sorry, I have to disagree.
I mean, it's a narrow discussion, and it's a narrow issue that we're talking about. I mean, the wider is about the pull factor, but really it's about this particular person. What happened to him, why he was faced with that decision that he wanted to take his life. There'll be an inquiry, and I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, there will be an inquiry, definitely. Look, there's something else going on here on The Independent about Harry and Meghan's Archwell charity suffering a donations plunge of nearly... well, it depends what you read, actually, because, I mean, there's some articles online saying it's 10 million quid. Recollections may vary, not for the first time, of course, when it comes to a story involving them. But on the front of The Independent, it says the charity £500,000 loss hit by an £8.5 million drop in donations. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex appear in a slick new video promoting the Archwell Foundation. Though, Susanna, I'll come to you on this. I mean, it just seems astonishing that people with their platform and their ability to network can be sitting on top of a charity that's seen a £500,000 loss.
Not really. That's probably what happens when you are quite popular in the public eye, and then suddenly you start making statements that annoy a lot of people. And guess what? They don't give you money anymore. Surprise, surprise, not.
OK, all right, look, we'll return to this because we've got a couple of other stories and a few other viral clips I want to get to you as well. Fat Cat COVID inquiry lawyers are said to cost taxpayers £750,000 a day on barristers and solicitors. Find out why one of them in particular has been nominated in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. I don't think they'll be nominated for Greatest Britain. Coming up, Ricky Gervais didn't become one of the richest comedians in the world by playing it safe. So you will not want to miss one of his most controversial jokes ever that has caused quite a stir. That's coming up in my press pack when I ask, is anything off limits? See you in a tick.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist. And you survived? I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, some more of tomorrow's front pages have landed in front of me now in the most entertaining paper review you'll get anywhere on the telly. And the fresh ones Oh, the Daily Express. Victory for PM. Mutiny over Rwanda plan fades away for now. Who's writing these? Every single headline has got for now at the end of it. Rishi sees off rebellion, insists that he can deliver on the Stop the Boats pledge. Look, we've absolutely done that to death. Donations to Prince Harry's charity plunged by £9 million. Yet we get that as well. Let's go to the Daily Star. Why not? You can always rely on them for something a little bit different. And indeed we can. The worst hairstyle in the world is back as 1 in 5 go for a Donald Trump. Baldies rejoice, says the Star. They think it's all comb over. Yep. Well done, everybody. Well done, everyone at the Star. There's also a picture of a fox that says Number 10 Fox gives his verdict on Rishi, and it is a fox urinating against a Christmas tree. So there we go. Good stuff. But apparently, according to this, the comb-over hairstyle is trendy again. 18% of men saying they will try it to cover a bald spot. I suppose it's cheaper than a flight to Turkey, isn't it? But there we go. All right, so I'm joined now by my press pack, former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena, cracking head of hair, of course, political commentator Suzanne Evans, and specialist cracking head of hair. He's doing all right as well. He's doing a specialist immigration lawyer, Ivan Sampson. There you go. You're certainly not a comb-over, it must be said. Look, I'm going to get us stuck straight in with a clip that's absolutely popping off on the internet now. So comedian Ricky Gervais has long been known for his controversial comedy. Has he overstepped the mark, though, with his upcoming Christmas special, Armageddon? Let's take a look, and then we'll get the views of the panel.
I've been doing a lot of video messages recently for terminally ill children, and only if they request it, obviously. I don't burst into hospitals and go, "Wake up, Baldy." It's through Make-A-Wish Foundation. Do you know the charity Make-A-Wish Foundation? They're great, and they give these dying kids their, like, one wish. And if it's me, I always say yes, and I always start the video the same way. I go, "Why didn't you wish to get better?" These are all jokes, all right?
Yeah, so look, what do we make of that, then? So apparently the parents of children who've been through the horror of cancer are not happy, including Seth Cover, who's launched a Change.org petition to remove the offending joke from the Netflix show. Ranil, I mean, is anything off limits, do you think? Was that a bit too far, or is it just Ricky Gervais?
Well, I have to say, I've never really liked Ricky Gervais. Okay. And, you know, great if he's been doing charity work, of course, but I do think that it's just a bit off. And, you know, I just don't think that, particularly when it comes to children with cancer, that that's something that he should be making money out of, because that's what he does with shows like that.
Off limits, do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You know, in principle, I don't think there should be anything in comedy that's off limits, but I watched that and I just thought, no, that is in such poor taste. I stopped watching Little Britain when they did a comedy sketch, a man dressed up as a woman who kept urinating everywhere.
Right.
And it was horrific. You know, so many women suffer from incontinence. It's a serious problem for millions of women, and they were ridiculing it. I thought, switching off, not watching again, and I'd do the same with this.
So there are certain things, I suppose, that will make you press the off switch.
I think when you're talking about making fun of serious illnesses and children dying in particular, I think it's such poor taste.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, some people will say, look, obviously Ricky Gervais, that's kind of part of his shtick, isn't it, really? And he's so big. I think instead of maybe focusing too much on the actual subject matter of what he's talking about there, Ivan, just talking generally about, you know, people who are so big and so rich that you can't really be cancelled, so you can kind of say what you like. Do you think Ricky Gervais is one of those people?
I do, and we expect him to say them. I know that's his act. And to be honest with you, if I was a Ricky Gervais paid money to watch him and he didn't say it, I'd have my money back. Because you expect him to do that, don't you? I mean, you expect him to come up with these jokes.
Something really quite offensive,
and I know I agree with what the panel said. I do accept that it shouldn't cause offence, but I do think that everyone has a right to free speech, and I'm a utilitarian. I think there's got to be a harm principle. And does it really harm somebody that badly making that joke? I'm not sure.
I don't think you shouldn't cause offence. I think, you know, that's sometimes part of good comedy, but I just think he has the right to say it, I have the right to not watch him.
It's a matter of good taste, and I just don't think this is good.
I accept that. If I had a child who had cancer, I wouldn't have liked it. So I think from that perspective, I agree with my panel.
All right, look, we've just about got time before we go to Greatest Britons and Union Jackasses, just to delve back in very, very quickly with one of the stories that are on the front page. We touched on it earlier on. I got Suzanne's views on it. It was this Harry and Meghan Archwell charity suffering something like a £10 million loss in donations. What do you make of this, Ron? I just find it quite hard to believe that you can have you know, be leaving the royal family to go and do good for the world and good for society and have this massive platform and all of that stuff, and then present a set of accounts like this.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary what's happened to them. And, you know, I've previously said on this great show that it is very, very sad what's happened. But I think this is now people looking at what they're trying to achieve and saying, well, actually, what is this all about? And I understand that their latest scheme is a scheme against bias against black women. Well, it seems to be, again, sort of the Meghan show, where she wants to have this victim culture that she wants to create around her. I think that's wrong, and it's no wonder donors are turning off.
I mean, you look like a man who's on top of your accounts. Right, if this is, I hope you're on it. This is odd. Do you not think this is odd?
I'd be, if I was their accountant, I'd be saying, can I please have a cheque for $6.5 million or pounds from your Netflix take, and to make up the difference.
Yeah.
And as good trustees, they should do that, shouldn't they?
OK, all right, now, it is time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Right, Susan, we're going to you first on this. Greatest Britain, please.
So my Greatest Britain this week is Rachel McLean MP, the woke hater for liking a tweet describing a Green Party parliamentary candidate as a bloke in a wig. But I love her because she spoke the truth. Good for her for being the grown-up version of the boy that cries the emperor has no clothes.
I think we've got a little clip, actually.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it is a transphobic comment. It's dog whistling at the finest, you know. It's gaslighting, it's everything.
Right, I mean, make of that what you will. Ranald, who's your Greatest Britain?
You may not agree, but Robert Jenrick, because, you know, actually, I think politicians who resign on points of principle deserve some respect, and I think the public want more people like him who do call things out when they see it.
Well, we can indeed hear and see a bit of Robert Jenrick now.
It's not a bad bill, but it is not the best bill. I want this bill to work. The test of this policy is not, is it the strongest bill we've done? It's not, is it a good compromise? It's, will it work?
Strong start. Go on, Ivan. Greatest Britain.
Yvette Cooper. I think she was brilliant in the Commons. Sensible plan for immigration, good ideas, and ones that will work, as opposed to the Randall plan.
All right, OK, today's Greatest Britain, Suzanne wins with Rachel McLean MP. There we go. Now we're going to have to rattle through Union Jackass. Suzanne, go on.
So it's Hugo Keith KC, the lawyer who's leading the COVID inquiry, behaving like a pompous idiot. He's only got one line, and that's to try and completely ignore the catastrophic damage lockdowns did.
Ranald, quickly.
Sir Keir Starmer MP, you know, he says that this is a gimmick, but he's never voted in favour of stricter measures to improve the asylum system. He's opposed them 14 times, and he's abstained 22 times.
Ivan, the president of the Turkish football club who smashed the referee in the face. I mean, that is got to be the story of the year. Who would expect a president of a club to do such a terrible thing? Broke his eye socket.
I mean, it is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I am going to go to Keir Starmer, though, of course. But there we go. So Keir Starmer is the Union Jackass. Look, thank you very much, everybody, for watching, for listening, for tuning in. If you've missed anything, go back and watch it all on YouTube. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Mwah.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Drier and clearer weather will move into northwestern areas, bringing a frosty start to Wednesday for some of us, but it's going to stay drizzly and quite dull across eastern areas. That's as this area of low pressure that's brought an unsettled day today pushes into the east, where it will linger through much of the day. That will mean that we've got continued heavy rain across eastern areas through the course of this evening. There's still a rain warning in force for that across parts of northeastern England and eastern Scotland. Ahead of that rain, though, across the southeast, we'll see quite a lot of cloud develop overnight, so quite a murky night here. A different story, though, further north and west, where we'll see clear spells, allowing a frost and potentially some icy patches by tomorrow morning. And then that clearer, drier weather becomes slightly more widespread through the course of Wednesday, spreading into parts of northern England, as well as Wales and the southwest of England as well. Further east, though, it stays cloudy with drizzly rain through much of the day, so quite a dull and damp day, with drizzly rain developing in the southeast by the end of the day. today and feeling fairly cool as well. In the northwest, though, it will feel fairly pleasant in sunshine despite the colder start to the day. A chilly start in the southeast on Thursday morning, but it will soon cloud over as the next area of rain arrives. However, the heaviest rain will be much more limited, as that is because high pressure is starting to build in for Friday and into the weekend as well. So that means we'll see more in the way of dry weather, and temperatures will rise by day and by night. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News and the top story tonight. The Prime Minister has secured a victory in the House of Commons with MPs backing his Safety of Rwanda bill. He had a majority of 44 votes. Here's how it went.
Order. Order. The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269. So the ayes have it, unlocked.
Well, the government described it as the toughest legislation to be presented in front of Parliament, and it was also seen very much in the corridors of power as a test of Rishi Sunak's leadership. Posting on social media after the vote, the Prime Minister said the British people should decide who gets to come into this country, not criminal gangs or foreign courts. And he added he'd now work on making the bill law to get flights going to Rwanda and to stop the boats. In other news today, schools waiting for an Ofsted inspection can now defer the visit until after the new year, and all requests will be granted. It comes after the result of a coroner's report into the death of the former head teacher, Ruth Perry. It found that an inspection downgrading her school to inadequate over safeguarding concerns likely contributed to her taking her own life. Two school leaders' unions say simply granting inspection deferrals to schools at the end of term doesn't go far enough. The head of Thames Water has told MPs today the company doesn't have enough money to cover its ballooning debts. The UK's biggest water supplier has £1.35 billion of external debt, with the first £190 million due to be repaid in April next year. That comes days after interim bosses said immediate and radical action was needed to secure the company's financial future. Leading medics have been warning that medical associates pose a risk to patient safety. A new poll by the British Medical Association doctors in the UK are now concerned about the expanding responsibilities of the so-called medical associates who aren't medically qualified. It comes as the government prepares to introduce new legislation tomorrow, allowing those associate roles to be regulated by the doctor's watchdog. But the BMA says that